"And here," my father said, his voice echoing through the glittering tech gala, "is my daughter Chloe, the one who wasted her potential. We gave her the best education money could buy, and she used it to play video games." Laughter erupted from the crowd, venture capitalists and CEOs in designer suits, until one investor finished his sentence for him quietly, but clearly. "She's Cygnus." That sound sliced through the laughter sharp as a line of code, and the entire room fell silent. 2 hours earlier, I had walked into that gala feeling like a syntax error in a perfect line of code. The hotel lobby in Palo Alto was all glass and smart lighting, buzzing with the sound of new money of people who measured their worth in gigahertz and user acquisition. I watched my father Donald across the room. He wasn't a father tonight. He was a salesman, and he was trying to sell himself to the heavy hitters of Silicon Valley. His target, $2 million in Series A funding for his new sales company. I knew this not because he told me, but because I'd read his pitch deck. He'd left it open on his desktop, full of security holes I could have patched in 5 minutes. I was wearing my usual uniform dark jeans, a blazer, and a plain t-shirt. It's the standard outfit for a white hat hacker, the kind of person who gets flown in to break billion-dollar systems. In this room, it was a social crime. My sister Olivia, the family's golden child, was already there gliding through the crowd in a dress that cost more than my monthly rent. She was the image of success. I was the inconvenient footnote. My father spotted me near the bar and his smile tightened. He excused himself from a conversation and marched over. There was no hello, just an assessment. "You couldn't even try," he hissed, his eyes raking over my outfit. "This is a $2 million night, Chloe, not a college land party. Look at your sister. That is what success looks like. She understands branding. What do you understand?" "Tyler invited me," I said, my voice flat. Tyler was my younger brother, the family's head of marketing, and the only one who still bothered to send me an invite. "Well, stay out of the way," Donald snapped. "Don't embarrass me." He adjusted his tie and turned back to the room, scanning for his next target. I did stay out of the way. For an hour I nursed a club soda and watched him perform. He was a master of the backslap and the feigned mutual interest. Finally, he cornered the man he'd been hunting all night, Jeffrey, the CEO of a massive tech fund. Olivia was at his side laughing at something Jeffrey said. I saw Donald look around the room, his eyes landing on me. A cold understanding settled in my stomach. This wasn't random. It was strategic. "Chloe," he boomed across the room, "come over here. There's someone I want you to meet." Every head turned. This was the part I hated the performance. I walked over feeling the weight of their judgment. Jeffrey looked at me with polite confusion. "Jeffrey," my father said, putting a heavy hand on my shoulder, "I want to show you the full picture of my family. You've met Olivia, my marketing genius, and Tyler, the future of sales." He smiled, the picture of the proud patriarch. Then he tightened his grip on my shoulder. "And this," he said, his voice dripping with condescending pity, "this is my other daughter, Chloe, the other one." Jeffrey raised an eyebrow. "The other one?" "The brilliant one," Donald laughed, but it was a cold, sharp sound. "Wasted potential. We gave her everything, top-tier education, every opportunity. And what does she do with it?" He leaned in as if sharing a hilarious secret. "She plays on her computer all day. Literally, just plays games. A hacker or something." The investors around him chuckled. It was the laugh I'd heard all my life, the polite, dismissive laugh that filed me away as a family joke. I stood there, my face heating up, my hands clenched. I just had to endure it. This was the moment. The exact moment the hook from Chapter 1 took place. My father, beaming, looked at Jeffrey, expecting him to join in the joke. And that's when Jeffrey, the man holding my father's $2 million dream in his hands, looked past my father his eyes locking directly on mine. His expression wasn't pity. It was recognition. Donald choked on his cocktail, a spray of expensive mist hitting the lapel of his suit. The laughter in the room died, instantly replaced by a thick, heavy silence. He stared at Jeffrey, confused. Cygnus. What is that? Some kind of video game. It was Stephanie who answered. She was the chief security officer for one of the biggest data firms in the valley, and she hadn't smiled once all night. Her voice was cold, precise, and cut through the silence. Cygnus isn't a game, she said, her eyes fixed on Donald. Cygnus is the handle of the most sought-after white hat hacker on the West Coast. She's the one who wrote the entire threat detection algorithm my company runs on. Donald's face went from confused to pale. Alexander, the young venture capitalist, stepped forward, adding his own clarification. The protocol she wrote, he said, nodding toward me, is the only reason my portfolio didn't lose $50 million in a data breach last quarter. We've been trying to hire her for a year. The silence in the room was deafening. It wasn't just quiet. It was the sound of a narrative shattering, the sound of $2 million evaporating. My father looked at me, his mouth slightly open. He saw me, Chloe, in my simple blazer. And then he looked back at these two titans of industry. He couldn't connect the two. Olivia was frozen, her practiced smile melting into an expression of pure, unfiltered disbelief. And me, I just stood there. My father, of course he didn't know. How could he? I had spent my entire life building my invisibility. I had architected it, coded it, encrypted it. I built a fortress around my success, not to keep others out, but to keep him out. My success was never for them. It was from them. It was the one part of my life his ridicule couldn't touch, the one place his voice couldn't reach. He thought I was playing games in a basement. He had no idea I was building empires from it. I had constructed Cygnuses as a shield, a ghost in the machine, who could do all the things Chloe was never allowed to be powerful, respected, brilliant. And now my two worlds had just collided. My father didn't know because I never told him. I never told any of them. You see, I had tried years ago. I was 15 when I built my first rudimentary encryption program. I was so proud of it. I found my father in his study, beaming, holding my laptop. Dad, look, I made this. It hides things. He didn't even look up from his sales reports. He just waved his hand. That's nice, Chloe. More of your little computer games. Go show your mother. I stood there for a moment. It's not a game, Dad. It's useless, he said finally, looking at me. His eyes weren't angry. They were just bored. It's a waste of time. Why can't you be more like Olivia? She's out with her friends. She's learning people skills. That's what gets you ahead in this world, Chloe, not this tapping. That was the moment I learned. My achievements weren't just ignored. They were an inconvenience. This is the trap of cruelty normalization. In my family, we operated on a shared delusion. Olivia was the asset, and I was the liability. Her success in marketing, her social grace, her perfect clothes that was defined as normal, my passion, my mind, my ability to see patterns in lines of code, that was weird. That was lacking. That was failure. And when a family repeats a lie long enough, it becomes their truth. My success was a threat to their story. If I was successful, it meant my father's definition of value was wrong. It meant Olivia wasn't the only one who deserved praise, and they couldn't handle that. So I built a fortress. I built Cygnus. This is what people don't understand about surviving in a house like that. It's what I call the invisible chain of the survivor. From the outside, people look at you and say, "Why did you just stand there? Why did you take it? Why didn't you just leave?" They don't see the prison without bars. They don't understand that you've been trained since childhood to believe that your silence is the price of admission. You are taught that your worth is conditional. I knew instinctively that if I brought my achievements home, they would be dissected, belittled, and ultimately destroyed. My father's ridicule would have poisoned the one thing I loved. So I didn't give him the chance. I didn't become weak. I became a ghost. Cygnus was my sanctuary. Cygnus got the 6-figure contracts. Cygnus advised corporations. Cygnus was respected by men like Jeffrey and Alexander. And Chloe was the one who went home for Christmas, wore the simple clothes, and nodded silently when her father made his little jokes. I wasn't surviving in their world. I was living in a completely different one. They just couldn't see it. Until tonight, the silence in that ballroom was no longer just quiet. It was a vacuum, a void where my father's authority used to be. Donald, his face a mottled gray, was trying to form a laugh. It came out like a cough. Well, he sputtered, looking at Jeffrey. A hacker, you say? Quite the surprise. Kids and their hobbies, right? He was trying to reclaim the narrative to file Cygnus under the same hobby category as playing games. He was trying to make us all believe we were still in his world playing by his rules. But Jeffrey wasn't looking at him. He was already walking toward the small stage where the event's MC had been standing. He calmly picked up the microphone. The quiet thump of the mic turning on echoed through the room. "Good evening, everyone." Jeffrey's voice boomed, calm and authoritative. The remaining whispers died. My apologies for the interruption, but since my colleague Stephanie brought it up, I feel this is the perfect moment for an announcement I was planning to make next week. My father Donald froze. He looked like a man who just realized he'd been lecturing a fire marshal about a dress code violation right before his building was condemned. As many of you know, Jeffrey continued, my fund has been moving aggressively into the cybersecurity space. Tonight, I'm announcing our new $2 billion investment vehicle dedicated exclusively to predictive threat analysis. 2 billion. The number hung in the air, thick with zeros. Donald, who had been trying all night to raise 2 million, looked physically ill. Olivia just stared her mask of perfection, finally cracking her face, a pale imitation of the confident golden child from an hour ago. But a fund of that size, Jeffrey said, requires a foundation of absolute impenetrable security. For 5 years, we have been trying to license a particular protocol. A piece of code so elegant, so predictive, it's considered the gold standard by every serious firm in the valley. We were never able to find the author. He paused, scanning the room, his eyes landing on me. Until tonight. He raised his glass. The entire security architecture of our $2 billion fund is built on a protocol written by a developer known only as Cygnus. He held his glass directly toward me, a silent toast that echoed louder than any speech. "Chloe," he said, and my name in his mouth felt like a verdict. "Your code isn't just a hobby. It is the new standard. Congratulations." It wasn't just a takedown. It was an execution. Donald didn't just lose his $2 million deal. He lost his entire reputation in the span of 30 seconds. He had just publicly, loudly, and repeatedly mocked the very person that the most powerful man in the room was basing his next multi-billion-dollar venture on. It was a catastrophic failure of judgment, and every investor in that room saw it. Olivia looked like she'd seen a ghost. Her entire value system, the one where she was the success and I was the failure, had just been inverted. The shift in the room was seismic. It was no longer about Donald's pitch or Olivia's charm. The center of gravity, the focus of all that wealth and power had moved. The investors, the CEOs, the people my father had spent all night trying to impress, were no longer looking at him. They were all looking at me. People started to move, not toward my father, who was standing alone, his face pale, not toward Olivia, who was frozen by his side. They moved toward me. A line formed. Alexander was first, pulling me into a hug. "It's about time, Cygnus," he whispered. Stephanie followed, handing me her card. "We need to talk. My offer still stands." Then came the others, strangers. The same people who had politely chuckled at my father's joke were now pushing forward, hands extended, their faces eager, their eyes lit with a new kind of respect. "Chloe Wright! Incredible work. I had no idea. I'm with the Apex Fund. We must have a meeting." I shook hands. I nodded. I said thank you, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. I glanced over their shoulders. My father and Olivia were still standing there, marooned on an island of their own making. No one was speaking to them. No one was even looking at them. They had become, in that instant, completely irrelevant. Donald met my eyes from across the room. I saw no remorse, no apology. I just saw the cold, hard panic of a salesman who had just realized he'd insulted his only client. He had built his life on appearances, and I had just shown him that reality has a much higher price. The fallout was efficient. The $2 million deal wasn't just lost, it was vaporized. Donald's reputation in the valley, which he had spent all night trying to build, was annihilated by a single two-syllable word, Cygnus. Jeffrey, of course, never returned his calls. A week later, I stood in my father's office. It was the first time I'd ever been there. It was small, with beige walls and a faint smell of stale coffee. The bravado from the gala was gone. He just looked old. "Chloe," he started. His voice was rough. You have to talk to him. To Jeffrey. You have to explain." I just looked at him, waiting. "Please," he begged, and the words sounded foreign coming from him. This was it. This was everything. That $2 million deal, I was counting on it. You could fix this. Just one call. Tell him it was a misunderstanding. Tell him. Tell him what Dad I asked. My voice wasn't angry. It was calm, clinical. Tell him you didn't mean it. That you haven't spent the last 20 years telling me I was a waste of potential. That you didn't just publicly humiliate me for sport. It was a mistake, a joke I didn't know, he pleaded. You didn't ask, I said. The words were quiet, but they landed with the force of a hammer. You never once asked. I picked up my bag. He panicked and grabbed my arm, his grip surprisingly weak. Chloe, please, I'm your father. You're destroying my company. You're destroying me. I looked down at his hand on my sleeve. I felt no pity, no anger, just clarity. No, I said, pulling my arm free. I'm not doing anything. This isn't my action. This is the consequence of yours. I walked out of his office and didn't look back. I realized I didn't need to destroy my father's past. He was perfectly capable of doing that himself. True justice isn't about tearing things down. It's not about revenge. It's about what you build in its place. It's the justice of the sower, not the executioner. My whole life, my father operated on the justice of the king, punishment, ridicule, retribution. But the sower knows the real power isn't in the fire, it's in the seed. It's in building something new, something that will outgrow the weeds. 6 months later, I stood on a different stage. This one was at my alma mater in an auditorium packed with engineering students. Jeffrey and Stephanie were in the front row. When I was a student here, I said, my voice clear and steady over the microphone. I was told my passion was a hobby. I was told that my focus was a waste of potential. I was told over and over to be more like everyone else. Today I'm here to make sure no other young woman ever has to hear those words again. In partnership with Jeffrey's new fund, I am officially announcing the Cygnus Scholarship for Women in Cybersecurity, a full-ride scholarship complete with a mentorship program designed to fund the next generation of women who are told they're too different or just playing games. The applause was thunderous. My work as Cygnus had given me a voice, but this was giving my purpose a voice. The final image of my story isn't that gala. It's not my father's face when he realized he'd lost. It's this me a few months later in a university lab sitting next to the first scholarship recipient, a brilliant young woman with a fire in her eyes. We're both pointing at a screen full of complex code. And we are both finally smiling. We are both seen. If this story touched you, please share it. And tell me in the comments, have you ever turned someone else's disdain into the fuel for your success? I would love to read your story.